Depression. Depression. I'm dead inside. Okay. Resident Evil 4, 9 essential combat tips.
The newly released remake of Resident Evil 4 shares a lot in common with the original, but there are just enough differences to really throw a wrench in your plans of not being chainsawed in half. Thankfully, if you don't want to be chainsawed in half, we've assembled our RE4 fans on staff to pass on to you the best tips we know. Here are 9 combat tips for Resident Evil 4. Like any good survival horror game, ammo is precious. Aim for the head or kneecaps to stagger your enemies, and once the white marker, which is new to the remake, flashes above their head, you can hit them with a melee attack for extra damage, and more importantly, crowd control.
Stressful.
You can also melee attack after perfect parrying with your knife. Just look for the symbol in the bottom right to perfect your timing.
Not fun at all. Not a good time. Feeling good? Yeah.
New to the
100%.
remake are several different knife skills. Parrying, stealth kills, downed enemy attacks.
So, did you do any of this parrying with a knife during your demo? Because I did not get a chance to. I was too scared, to be honest. No, I did not. Yeah, I didn't get a chance to. I saw that you could parry the chainsaw from the Chainsaw Man, but I didn't know how to do that. I guess there's a prompt and I just didn't see it, but.
And auto escapes from enemy engagements will all inflict a small hit to your knife's durability, but your combat knife can be repaired by visiting the merchant. If you have other knives than your combat knife equipped, they will break permanently before automatically switching back to your combat knife. So manually equip these breakable knives if you want to use them first to get them out of your inventory. If you take down an enemy and the white mark appears above their head while they're still wiggling around, make sure to use your knife to finish them off quickly. Otherwise, they'll come back and they're bent.
Yeah, that happens to me a lot. I think that when we do play this game, we're gonna play it in the hardest difficulty first. Because I've learned that on hardest difficulty games for RE, if you play them first, the game in general just becomes super easy. So I think I'm gonna play it first. Also, my finals were hard because I had a group to do it with. I had to basically write a paper with a group, which, if you've ever wrote a paper before, is stupid. Like, writing a paper with a team is really dumb. Because you've all got different ideas on how to do that. So we wrote a paper, and then it was just like, it was like 9 ideas stapled together with like staples, and then we did a presentation, which was just, it was awful. It was actually terrible, but I'm sure it's gonna be a good grade because no teacher in college knows what they're doing.
And neck form, or later in the game, as their much more dangerous Las Plagas form. In the OG RE4, you had to ready your knife before attacking with it. You can still do that in the remake, but you can also just press the weapon fire button without aiming anything first to start slashing away.
You're going hard mode first? So I played that chainsaw mode, and it was fucking ridiculously cool. Like, it was hard, but it wasn't as hard as Village was. Like, Village was, like, unfair. Like, Village was super unfair. Like, that beginning was fucking, if you didn't cheese it, was basically impossible.
Readying it before pressing the weapon fire button will perform a quick stab, while just pressing the fire button without aiming will do a slower but wider slash.
What video is that?
And if you think you're fast enough, a quick stab to the eyes will stagger your enemies enough for a melee attack, just like a headshot. These different knife actions will all degrade the knives by drastically varying amounts. Things like the aforementioned stabs, slashes, and parries will only hurt the knives a little, while stealth kills and quickly escaping chokeholds will make them break a lot faster. These amounts also vary depending on which knife you're using and the amount that you've upgraded them. so keep an eye on the knife meter to see what damage exactly you're doing to your equipment, to decide if saving a little bit of your health is worth the massive hit to durability. Traps return in this remake with a few differences. Enemies can set bear traps mid-battle, and also get caught in them, so use that to your advantage to thin out the herd a little bit. And if you don't want to deal with them, slash or poke at them with your knife to set them off safely. You can also deactivate tripwire traps by crouch walking towards them and interacting, rather than having to shoot them like the first game. You can, however, shoot them after the fact to still harm your enemies. More than just doing damage, a big part of surviving in Resident Evil 4 is keeping your enemies away from and in front of you. If enemies are swarming in from all sides, quick turn using down and the sprint button and hightail it out of there. If there are bigger or more damaging enemies in the midst of the horde, they can sometimes hit the enemies around them when they swing their weapons, so pick away at stragglers, or even melee them back into the group so the big baddies can do double duty. If you're being harassed by the dynamite throwing enemies, you can blow them up even before the dynamite is lit by shooting the sticks in their hands.
So
And
I'm
the
here.
interest
What I
of
hear
utilizing
here
mob
is
mentality,
that
like the tip
the knife is really strong, but you're gonna forget to use it. That's exactly what I'm hearing when I'm watching this. My brain's like, yeah, totally. You should use the knife. It can parry, block attacks, and knock people onto the ground. But you're gonna forget. But you're gonna forget to use it, guys. I think the knife breaks in this one, and you have to repair it. Yeah. But also, like, don't you? They said you get other knives though. You get breakable knives that you can't repair that you can use in your first slot, and you get a lot of them. That was one of their first tips. Was like, hey, your knife is repairable and it breaks, but there are also other knives that you get that are breakable that you could equip, and you should equip those first, like they're like ammo. Yeah, see? I saw that and I was like, oh, okay. Okay. Knives are going to be a big deal.
before, try waiting until the friends are nearby before blowing them up as a group activity. Just like the original, flash grenades do major damage to exposed Las Plagas bodies, so anytime you see those writhing tentacles, there's a
video
good
quality
chance your
is
flash
bad.
grenade will kill them outright.
Like, this whole thing for me even is, like, textured.
Hopefully these combat
IGN is
tips make
slipping
you a
up.
force to be reckoned with in the dilapidated villages of Resident Evil 4's Europe. Have any game wisdom you want to impart? Make sure to leave it in the comments below, and while you're here, check out our review of Resident Evil 4. And for everything else gaming, keep it right here on IGN.
We'll connect IGN's video to your video. Let's do this. Let's watch this video too.
Hi, this is Mark Brown with Game Maker's Toolkit, a series on video game design. Resident Evil 4 does something really clever. I mean, that's an understatement, the game's a masterpiece, but I'm talking specifically about the way the game dynamically shifts its level of difficulty to meet your skill level. Perform well at the game by avoiding attacks and shooting accurately, and the game will get harder as enemies do more damage and become more aggressive. But if you suck and keep dying or just keep getting hurt, the game will ease off and the Ganados will go down more easily and wait around longer to get shot before rushing at you. Also, the contents of the crates and barrels shift from being generous to being stingy as you become more skilled.
Do you think
and
this is going to be an
sometimes
RE4
enemies will
remake
completely
too,
disappear
though?
from
I don't
existence
know.
if you're really struggling. Here, I've been playing really well. And I enter the notorious water room and get set upon by 9 cultists, 7 on the ground and 2 crossbow snipers up high. But then
think they all
I
have a
die a
version
few
of
times,
this?
and suddenly the snipers are gone, making this room slightly easier to tackle. Because the game keeps
maybe
pace
on the
with
lower
your own skill
difficulties.
as a player, Resident Evil 4 helps you slip into a zone that psychologists and game designers call flow.
You're probably
which is
right.
the fabled middle ground between a game being so easy it leaves you bored, and so hard it makes you anxious or frustrated. While the gradually rising difficulty curve of most linear video games will try and keep players in that flow state,
I don't think that the hardest difficulty of Resident Evil Village has this. I'll be honest with you. Maybe lower difficulties do, and that would make a lot of sense. But like, I don't think that Resident Evil Village, like the hardest Village of Shadows, I don't think that has this. Just because that like from playing through Shadow so much, like it's so scripted and the damage feels so consistent that I don't think that's the case. I could be wrong.
It can't account for every type of gamer, and if the player picks the wrong difficulty option at the start, they may instantly rob themselves.
I mean, maybe it's like I like 100% I could see the flow thing happening in like the lower difficulties because they're meant to be manageable. So it's like, oh, you're doing really good at this hardcore mode. Well, then let's just bump it up a little bit. Oh, you're struggling a little bit. Okay, let's lower the damage a bit. But when you're playing like the hardest difficulty, that's like Village of Shadows or Chainsaw Man, which are the top two for RE4 remake and Village of Shadows 8 RE8. They probably don't do that just because they want to have it consistently be difficult. But on the lower difficulties, probably there is a flow thing to it. I think that's pretty cool.
Of a satisfying experience. That's the advantage of a dynamic difficulty setting, which constantly corrects itself to provide an experience that challenges the player without overwhelming them, and it stops them from getting stuck in a rut, but it doesn't let them waltz through the game either. This is, however, not the most clever thing about Resident Evil 4's dynamic difficulty. The smartest thing is that many gamers watching this video right now are saying to themselves, wow, I didn't even know the game did that. And that may be the point. Capcom never officially stated that the game altered its own difficulty. It's not an option in the menu and it's not in the manual, it wasn't in a trailer or a bullet point in a press release, and designer Shinji Mikami, who would later turn this system into an entire game in the brilliant PS2 brawler God Hand, didn't
This game
gab
is
about
awesome,
it in
by the way.
interviews. The only real source for the feature's existence,
If you've never
other
played
than the
God Hand, God
experiences
Hand
of
is
Resident Evil
really fun.
obsessives, is from an official strategy guide that came out almost a year
It's also the official favorite game of Total Biscuit, if you know who Total Biscuit is.
after the game. You see, a number of games offer to help out if you're struggling, like the Super Kong in Donkey Kong Country Returns, which clears a tricky level for you if you fail too many
rest
times.
in peace, the
But many
biscuit,
hardcore
dude.
players are too proud to accept the helping hand.
I
Would
cried
rather
when he
beat their
died,
head
man.
against the
I
wall in
literally
frustration
cried.
than suffer the indignity of getting a free pass, especially when the game actually mocks you for reducing the difficulty. If you die too often in the upcoming Metal Gear Solid 5, you'll be given the option to wear a goofy chicken hat, which reduces the challenge but makes Snake look like a complete Burk. However, by making the effects subtle and not advertising them to the world, like it did with Resident Evil Darkside Chronicles,
Dude, him, Jesse, Dex Bonus, all those people like really shaped my childhood. Like in a really massive way. Like I probably started watching when I was like 12. I'm 29. Like they were a big part of my life. And whenever I heard that Total Biscuit died from cancer, like it was like a part of me was killed. It was like it was a really sad moment for me. Like I wish that didn't happen. Like I know that sounds crazy, but like really though, like I don't cry a lot for a lot of people. Like even like some family members I don't cry for, but like I don't know, that sounds kind of psychopathic, but like I don't know, man. You get attached to certain people differently, you know?
Resident Evil 4 gives players all the advantages of dynamic difficulty adjustment without making them feel patronized. Plus, if they don't know about it, players can't game the system by intentionally killing or injuring themselves to drop the difficulty setting, which is exactly what speedrunners do. Here's a top Resi 4 speedrunner, Robert Sunblade Brandle, getting hit on the ski lift and purposefully failing QTEs to reduce the difficulty and therefore make certain areas easier to dash through. Resident Evil 4 did not invent the idea of a sliding difficulty scale, of course. NES and arcade shmups like Xanac and Xevious were doing it back in the 80s, and Remedy applied the idea to a third-person
Neebs
shooter
Gaming?
in Max Payne a few years before Capcom had the chance.
That sucks,
Left
dude.
4 Dead made particularly good use of dynamic difficulty to modulate dramatic tension. Here's Valve's Gorton Barber on the subject.
We created a system that tracks each survivor's stress level by watching for events like how much damage are you taking, how many zombies have you killed near you, and so on. If a survivor's stress level gets too high, the system will step in and forcibly throttle back the zombie population system to make sure the team gets a break every now and then.
Kid Icarus Uprising and Super Smash Bros. Have an interesting system where you essentially place a bet on the difficulty level you think you'll finish the stage at. If you succeed, you get a big payout, but if you fail, you lose a bunch of your stuff and get knocked down to an easier difficulty level until you can beat the game. And Flow, which is named after that psychological zone, lets you manually moderate your level of difficulty by choosing when to delve into deeper waters by chomping on a red organism, and when to retreat to safety by munching on a blue one. It's a bit like deciding whether or not to grind for a while in an RPG. But the number of games with dynamic difficulty adjustment is pretty small, and most of them advertise it to the world, like Sin Episodes, which made a big song and dance of its personal challenge system, right there on the Steam description. But I think this is something that game designers should keep on the down low. Don't make it a press release or a blog post. Keep it a secret. You want to let players reap the benefits of a sliding difficulty scale that keeps perfect pace with their skill level and helps remove areas of boredom or frustration. But you also want to avoid the drawbacks of hardcore gamers getting cranky and others spoiling their own experience by cheating the system. And yes, I do realise that there may be many games that use this system, but have done it so subtly that no one has actually noticed, in which case, bravo, mysterious game designers. Thanks for watching. Think you've spotted a game with a secret sliding difficulty
in the
scale?
world of mods, like, it's kind of hard to do that because you can track the number damage for a lot of, like, with a lot of mods. Like, people who outside mod and outside game develop can read backends a lot better, and it's a lot more difficult to get things like that, like, past people. People in general, especially speedrunners, when they start speedrunning a game, there's a thing called, I think it's called, like, deving, or like testing, where, like, they go through the game and they can see, like, the damage output numbers for everything they do. This happened a lot in Village of Shadows, where they were just testing how much damage they were doing and how much HP monsters had, and, like, the entire process of, like, speedrunning and figuring Village of Shadows out was just figuring out the damage numbers and trying to calculate what you needed for what area. The most people who speed run Village of Shadows will tell you the hardest part isn't necessarily the game itself. It's like having the right items for the right areas. Like, especially early on, like, if you don't have a certain amount of damage available to you, you cannot beat certain bosses because their HP is so high. Like, Village of Shadows versus Hardcore, which is the next level down, like, everything's multiplied by, like, 10, right? So if I kill someone, like, 3 shots, it takes, like, 30 shots to kill them. Like, it's pretty hard. It's pretty harsh. Like, everyone's, like, armor values and HPs are way higher. To the point to where, like, the hardest boss fight for me when I first started out playing Village of Shadows on speedrun was the first sister. The first sister and the castle. Because she needs a very precise amount of, like, damage input in a very short amount of time. And if you don't do it, you just die. And I died to her a lot trying to figure that out. On my first playthrough, it took me like an entire stream just to kill her. Like, it was that hard. The hole in your statement is that dynamic difficulty is not always pure number and damage or health. It's drop rate for certain items, it's aggressiveness to certain enemies. Oh yeah, sure. I mean, you're probably right. You're probably right. I'm not trying to make an argument as much as I'm just gushing about speedruns and talking about how people speedrun and how I think it's cool. I'm not necessarily trying to argue for the idea that this is your instinct is correct. Oh, okay. Cool. So my instinct was correct. Awesome. That's cool. That makes me feel good.